Welcome to a sky that laughed at death itself, where German pilots confident and cocky saw a hulking American fighter approaching, the P-47 Thunderbolt, engines roaring, wings bristling with guns that could turn the clouds into fire. They thought it was just another plane, another routine sortie. They were wrong. April 1944. Over the fields of northern France. Mist rolled in from the lowlands, the scent of wet earth mixed with smoke from distant artillery. Engines roared, tracer fire streaked the sky. American Thunderbolts climbed through the haze, meeting Luftwaffe fighters head-on, a deadly dance of wings and bullets, a battle of will, skill, and raw power. Before we dive into the chaos, leave a comment where you're watching from and the exact time you're listening. Share the moment you felt the tension rise, the instant you imagined the sky erupting in fire. It's not just a story, it's an experience. April 1944. Northern France was a land caught between calm and chaos. The spring air heavy with mist, dew clinging to splintered fences to the scorched earth of fields recently shelled. The Rhine not far, its waters reflecting a sky streaked with smoke and clouds. The scent of wet soil mixed with the metallic tang of distant artillery. Somewhere beyond the horizon, villages smoldered. Roofs collapsed under the weight of bombs. And yet the day began with an almost deceptive serenity. The quiet before a storm that no one could have anticipated. Engines stirred the silence first. Distant growls that grew into a roar. The unmistakable sound of the Thunderbolt climbing through low-hanging clouds. Every propeller cutting through air like a blade. Vibration trembling the cockpit floor. The scent of oil and hot metal filling the air. The Luftwaffe pilots stationed at makeshift airstrips hastily reconstructed from ruined fields watched the horizon with a mixture of boredom and mild irritation. Another patrol. Another routine interception. Their hands rested lightly on control sticks, helmets, snug goggles fogged from early morning condensation. Confidence was standard issue. Arrogance, too. The American Thunderbolts emerged from the fog, with a presence that could not be ignored. Gleaming silver, massive in wingspan engines screaming against gravity. The first bursts of sunlight caught on polished fuselages. Tracer rounds crisscrossed the clouded sky like threads of fire. Observers on the ground squinted, binoculars trembling in hands stiff from cold. Artillery crews adjusted positions, anticipating targets, unaware that the real storm was already slicing through the clouds. In the skies, formations began to align. Messerschmitts, Focke-Wulfs, numbering barely 300 in the sector, versus nearly 1,500 Allied aircraft poised to strike. Pilots ran mental checks, instruments humming. Radio chatter punctuated by static and clipped German words. Confident shouts, warnings, and occasional nervous laughter that would soon vanish. The Thunderbolts descended in their staggered formation, each plane carrying the weight of fully armed ammunition armor plating, designed to absorb hits that would cripple lighter aircraft. The machine itself, a fortress in the sky. Ground crews had learned to recognize the distinctive hum of the P-47, a sound that carried authority, a weight that promised destruction. They knew it from photographs, from reports, but hearing it live, engines screaming, propellers tearing the air, the roar almost alive. It felt like the sky itself had taken on a new character. One corporal whispered to another, "They're bigger than in the pictures, like birds of prey, and meaner." Yet no one could stop it. They were witnesses, silent, powerless. The wind over the hedgerows carried the distant echo of bombs falling. Tanks moving slowly across churned mud, and beneath it all the quiet hum of anticipation. German commanders signaled their pilots to intercept, confident in their training, confident in their numbers. Yet unknowingly, the arithmetic of industrial power had already begun to tilt the scales. The Thunderbolt was more than a plane. It was a manifestation of American industrial might. Precision mass production and tactical genius converged into a machine that could dominate the air without relying solely on finesse. The landscape below offered little sanctuary. Bombed-out villages, shattered hedgerows, rivers swollen with spring melt. Every open field a potential kill zone. Every ruined barn or tree line a hiding place. Yet none would save them from what was about to arrive. The American pilots focused on altitude, speed, and formation. Each maneuver calculated, each angle chosen to maximize firepower while minimizing exposure, a deadly dance rehearsed in simulations, but now performed in the living, breathing sky of war. Fog rolled and twisted around wingtips. Smoke from distant artillery snaked upwards. The sun was low, casting long shadows that shifted across ruined rooftops. Engines screamed. The smell of cordite and oil permeated the air. The Germans had trained for intercepts, for dogfights, for ambushes. Yet the scale, the speed, the armor of these thunderbolts exceeded everything they had imagined. Confidence wavered in the cockpits. Eyes darted. Hands clenched the controls. Instinct battled with reason. Radio transmissions became clipped. Some pilots reported sightings, others warned of unknown firepower. Panic began to creep in slowly. And Focke-Wulf swerved, its pilot calculating, sweating, and suddenly realizing that the assumed advantage was gone, that the skies were no longer familiar. The Thunderbolts exploited their superior dive speeds. 850 caliber machine guns bristling under each wing, armor that could shrug off lighter rounds. Each plane a fortress capable of killing at a distance. The mathematics of aerial combat had shifted, outgunned, outproduced, outmaneuvered. Yet few understood the truth at first glance. On the ground, the tension was palpable. Anti-air batteries adjusted to track fast-moving silhouettes. Binoculars trembled in hands slick with rain. Notes were scribbled into logbooks, recording the unprecedented. Each tracer streak noted each explosion catalogued. Fear began to seep in, quiet but relentless. The Luftwaffe had faced skilled pilots before, but never with such industrial firepower, never with such a relentless, calculated presence in the sky. And in this moment, amidst the fog, the smoke, the trembling earth, a strange stillness persisted, the calm that precedes realization. American pilots knew the stakes. German pilots would soon learn that their assumptions, their laughter, their confidence had been illusions. The air was thick with anticipation, electricity, a sense that history was unfolding in every engine roar, in every flash of tracer fire. The P-47 Thunderbolt was more than metal and fire. It was a herald, a force that turned a battlefield into a proving ground, and northern France, with its ruined farms and scarred fields, would bear witness. In the air, the stage was set, the players ready, the rules rewritten, and the moment when the sky itself would become a weapon approached. Slowly, inexorably. Somewhere below, soldiers paused. Farmers peeked from ruins. A corporal muttered prayers under his breath, and above them all, engines screamed. Wings cut through clouds. The smell of cordite thickened. The first sparks of destruction were already lighting the horizon. A lesson in power, precision, and inevitability. April 1944, northern France. The stage had been set for a battle that would echo through memory. For pilots who would not forget, for soldiers who would not forget, for the land itself scorched and scarred that would carry the echoes of that morning for decades. The Thunderbolt had arrived, and nothing would ever be quite the same. The P-47 Thunderbolt, was a machine built not for subtlety, but for survival, and for sheer, unrelenting power. Fully loaded, it weighed more than 8.2 tons. A hulking fortress of aluminum and steel, its Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp engine producing 2,000 horsepower, enough to hurl it through the sky at speeds exceeding 430 miles per hour. In the cockpit, every lever, every gauge, every dial was precise, calibrated to exacting tolerances, the result of countless hours of engineering. Thousands of man-days devoted to a single-purpose domination of the skies. 850 caliber Browning M2 machine guns bristled beneath its wings, each capable of delivering 200 rounds per minute. A torrent of lead that could tear through the fuselage of a Messerschmitt or a Focke-Wulf with terrifying efficiency. Ammunition stowed in synchronized belts, carefully weighted, designed to ensure sustained fire without jamming. Pilots trained relentlessly, firing thousands of rounds in simulation before ever leaving the ground. Every burst a lesson in controlled destruction. In April 1944, the Allies had already rolled out nearly 15,000 P-47s. The Luftwaffe struggled to replace losses, fielding fewer than 300 aircraft in the same sector. Germany had built 347 Tigers. America had produced 49 and 234 Shermans. The arithmetic of war was shifting. The numbers alone told a story of inevitability, of industrial supremacy, and the Thunderbolt was its ambassador. Flight manuals detailed every maneuver, every climb rate, every stall characteristic. Thunderbolts could dive at speeds that would rip apart lesser aircraft. Pilots learned to exploit this, attacking from above, striking hard, and pulling away with speed unmatched. Its weight was a strength, its armor designed to absorb hits from 20mm cannons that would disable lighter planes. History would note these specifications, but only when paired with the human skill that wielded them. Records from the USAAF archives show sorties flown over northern France in April 1944. 56th Fighter Group, led by Colonel Hubert Zemke, logged engagements with Luftwaffe interceptors. 22 enemy aircraft destroyed in a single morning. No Thunderbolt lost. The ratio almost impossible. The Office of Naval Intelligence noted, the P-47's combination of firepower and durability has altered tactical expectations. Enemy forces are overwhelmed by both numbers and technology. Even German reports, those written under duress, admitted confusion and fear. It was unlike anything we had faced. The skies themselves seemed to turn against us. Beyond numbers, the machine's psychological impact was profound. Pilots described the sound of the engines as almost predatory, the roar cutting through clouds and fog, a presence that demanded attention. Observers on the ground noted the uncanny ability of the Thunderbolt to appear suddenly, strike and vanish. Its silhouette became a symbol. Fear crystallized into legend. Some German pilots refused to engage. Others attacked recklessly and paid the ultimate price. Engineering documents reveal the meticulous design. The fuel system protected against hits. The cooling system reinforced. Even the armor plating behind the cockpit, designed to deflect 20mm shells. The Thunderbolt could sustain multiple hits and remain operational. Pilots who survived credited this with allowing them to return from missions that would have been fatal in other aircraft. One veteran recalled, "You could feel the plane absorb punishment. It was as if it had a will of its own. You trusted it with your life." Production statistics underscore the scale. Republic Aviation factories turning out dozens of airframes per week. Engines assembled with military precision. Quality control teams inspecting every rivet, every weld. The American war machine functioning like a clockwork. Numbers that dwarfed German capacity. Replacements arriving faster than losses could accumulate. Each new Thunderbolt a fresh assertion of aerial dominance. Tactical manuals of the period also illuminate doctrine. dive-bombing strafing runs, close escort missions. The Thunderbolt could fulfill multiple roles: ground attack or air superiority, adaptability that confounded the enemy. The Luftwaffe had trained for dogfights with lighter, more agile aircraft. The Thunderbolt's speed in dives combined with armor and firepower turned standard tactics into liabilities. Each encounter required recalibration, often under fire, and often with devastating results. First-hand accounts detail the reality. Sergeant Mike Johnson wrote in his diary, "The first burst tore through a 190, wings twisted flames licking the fuselage. I could see the pilots panic. And then nothing. The plane vanished into the clouds. It was instant, absolute, terrifying." Another pilot, Lieutenant Jensen, described the air as alive with fire. Tracers everywhere. The sky itself a war zone, and our P-47s slicing through it with precision. Such testimony bridges fact with human experience, grounding technical prowess in visceral reality. Even Luftwaffe reports, censored and rewritten for command, hint at the shock. Encountered unknown aircraft with unprecedented armament, unable to respond. Losses severe. Formations shattered. These lines, sparse and formal, belie the terror and confusion that pilots experienced. Documents dry on paper capture only a fraction of the chaos. Yet they confirm one undeniable truth: the P-47 Thunderbolt was a turning point, a machine that rewrote the rules of engagement. Maintenance logs from forward airfields reveal the strain and care required to keep these machines operational. Ground crews working 12 to 16-hour shifts, reloading ammunition, repairing engines, inspecting armor. Every mission dependent on human diligence. The machine alone was lethal, but the men and women behind it were indispensable. A symphony of coordination, precision, and endurance. Thus, the Thunderbolt was not merely a plane. It was a manifestation of technological, industrial, and human synergy. Fact layer 1 is clear weight, speed, firepower, armor, combined with relentless production and skillful piloting, created a weapon that overwhelmed the Luftwaffe. Yet within these cold numbers and specifications lived the human story, the fear, the awe, the courage that turned data into legend and statistics into cinematic reality. April 1944. Northern France. The stage was set. The P-47 Thunderbolt had arrived, and reality, measured in pounds, horsepower, and rounds per minute, was about to meet the terror and awe of the human experience. Numbers and legend converged. The sky would never be the same. Lieutenant Robert Jensen gripped the yoke, knuckles white beneath mud-slicked gloves. The cockpit shuddered with every engine thrum. Rain streaked the canopy, mixing with condensation and the faint tang of oil. He could feel the weight of the machine beneath him. 8 50 caliber guns, bristling under his wings, each loaded with the promise of fire and death. He adjusted his goggles, fogged with sweat, and glimpsed the horizon. The first German fighters appeared, sharp silhouettes cutting through the morning haze. Confident, disciplined, unaware of what awaited them. "Hold tight," Jensen shouted over the roar of the engines. Not to his wingman, not really, but to himself, to steady the pulse racing through his veins. Tracer rounds stitched through clouds. A silver streak of P-47 sliced past. The first 190 erupted in flames. Jensen's stomach lurched. The air smelled of cordite, burning metal, and fear. He pressed the triggers in rhythm with the engine, each squeeze precise, each burst a calculated statement. The machine responded with an almost sentient steadiness, a coiled force ready to release destruction. Below, Corporal Davis crouched behind the remnants of a shattered barn. Mud caked his boots. Rain soaked his uniform. Binoculars trembling in his hands, he tracked the unfolding chaos above. He counted the tracers. He counted the planes. God help them, he muttered under his breath. Yet even as fear gripped him, awe softened the edges, a machine of unimaginable power slicing through the sky with precision. Each explosion, each flaming aircraft was both horrifying and mesmerizing, a terrifying dance of skill and technology. In the air, pilots engaged in a deadly ballet. German formations attempted standard maneuvers, rolls, dives, tight turns, but the Thunderbolts countered effortlessly. Their weight, their armor, their guns, all turning disadvantage into advantage. One Luftwaffe pilot banked sharply, only to be caught in the crossfire of Jensen and his wingman. A fuselage erupted flames, licking the metal. The pilot bailed, parachute deploying in a puff of smoke. A momentary relief in a sea of carnage. Every pilot had a rhythm. A heartbeat synced with the aircraft. Jensen adjusted throttle, calculating dive angles. Ammunition belts humming. Tracers painting the sky. The noise a constant deafening roar. Yet he moved with calm. A trained predator amidst chaos, and below the earth trembled with the impact of shells, bombs, and fallen aircraft. The sensory overload was immense. Wind whipping against his helmet engines, screaming explosions, punctuating the clouds. Each moment a lesson in survival and in control. The Thunderbolt's design came alive in these moments. Armor plating absorbing hits that would have shattered lighter planes. Fuel tanks engineered to resist ignition. Guns calibrated to tear through fuselage. Each technical specification translating directly into life and death. A bridge between engineering and human skill. One pilot later recalled, "I could feel the plane respond. It was as if we were one, and together we were unstoppable." The human element intertwined with steel and fire. A symbiosis of courage and machinery. Back on the ground, observers scribbled notes furiously. Artillery crews adjusted aim, trying to predict movements of these metal behemoths. Civilians peered from ruined windows, witnessing a war that was almost mythical in its spectacle. Smoke and fog rolled across fields, mingling with the acrid stench of cordite. The sky had become a theater of destruction, and every person below was an unwilling audience. Yet for the pilots in the air, it was clarity, a cruel, focused clarity. The Thunderbolt's presence dictating the flow of battle. Jensen's wingman, Lieutenant Miller, dove to intercept a straggling Focke-Wulf. Rain pelting the canopy, guns blazing. The enemy aircraft spiraled, tracer fire carving ribbons of light across the clouds. Miller's voice came over the radio, tense but precise. "Target neutralized. Repeat, target neutralized." The words carried a weight, a confirmation, a reality check. The Thunderbolt was not just surviving. It was dominating. Every movement, every decision, every squeeze of the trigger had consequence, not just for pilots above, but for the landscape below. The Luftwaffe pilots began to realize their assumptions had been fatally flawed. Speed, firepower, armor. Every measure they had relied on was insufficient. Yet human instinct drove them onward. Maneuvers became desperate. Formations broke. A mixture of skill, terror, and hope guiding their actions. Jensen noted in his journal later, "They were professionals. But even professionals are mortal, and the sky belonged to us." The human drama unfolded alongside cold metal and firepower. Each pilot a character in a story written in smoke and lead. Moments of quiet punctuated the chaos. A plane banked away from a cloud of tracers. A pilot's breath audible in the headset. The wind screaming past. The weight of life and death suspended in a fragile moment. Then sudden violent, a German fighter exploded. Debris falling like dark snow into the haze below. Ground crews noted every detail. Each destroyed aircraft a statistic. Each burst of fire a story. Each human action, each choice magnified by the scale and power of the P-47. Even minor mistakes were unforgiving. A miscalculated dive, a lag in reaction, the consequences immediate and brutal. Jensen maneuvered with precision, every microsecond accounted for, every enemy action anticipated. The machine responded, engines vibrating, guns firing in sync, the partnership between human and metal absolute. The Thunderbolt, a weapon, yes, but also a lifeline, a protector, a lethal companion in the clouds. The human element extended to those on the ground, mechanics, ordnance crews, and planners, all synchronized in a chain reaction, ammunition prepared meticulously, engines inspected and tuned, each Thunderbolt a testament to both engineering and human effort. Every mission a combination of courage, skill, and trust, not only in oneself but in the machine, in one's comrades, in the collective endeavor. The battlefield was as much a human story as a technological one. As the engagement continued, patterns emerged. The Thunderbolts coordinated attacks with devastating efficiency, formations spiraling, diving, and climbing. German pilots faltered, disoriented. Fear replaced initial confidence, each burst from the Thunderbolt punctuating that shift. And yet in the midst of it all, moments of heroism shone. A pilot shielding a wingman, a daring dive that saved a straggler. These human choices, amplified by the power of the plane, became legendary. The stuff of whispered stories in mess halls, later journals, and after-action reports. By the end of the sortie, exhaustion settled over pilots like a heavy cloak. Adrenaline still thrummed, hands numb from cold and exertion. The landscape below bore the scars of aerial dominance, smoke, fire, twisted metal, the human cost measured in stories, in moments, in lives. Yet the triumph was undeniable, a combination of steel fire numbers and human courage. In every journal report and whisper, one truth persisted. The Thunderbolt was not only a machine, it was a partner in survival, a symbol of power, and a harbinger of inevitability. The sky, once a realm of equality for all pilots, became the domain of those who understood and mastered the P-47. Every human decision, every calculated risk, every moment of bravery, intertwined with engineering, creating a narrative of skill, fear, and awe. April 1944, Northern France. The human story of the Thunderbolt had been written, not in books, not in statistics, but in fire, smoke, and the hearts of those who flew. Germany had counted on experience, on skill honed over years, on aircraft designed for agility. They had calculated that the skies over northern France were theirs to dominate. Yet the numbers, the firepower, and the unexpected endurance of the Thunderbolt turned every expectation into illusion. Outgunned, Germany had 300 fighters in the region. America had deployed 1,500 aircraft within days. Outranged, the Luftwaffe's 20mm cannons were no match for the P-47's 850 caliber guns. Outproduced, Germany struggled to replace losses, while the Allies rolled out new planes with industrial precision. The arithmetic of war had shifted, silently, irrevocably. The Luftwaffe pilots began to grasp the truth in bursts of tracer fire. The sky a lattice of lead and smoke. They had predicted victory, expected to control the air. But reality struck fast, sharp, and undeniable. A Focke-Wulf spiraled under sustained fire. Wings torn, fuselage aflame. The pilot's last transmission clipped, static-laced. "I can't." Then silence. A brief pause. A human heartbeat lost amidst steel and fire. On the ground, commanders recalculated. Formations that were once secure now faltered. A dozen planes downed in minutes. German confidence collapsing under the onslaught. Each new sortie of Thunderbolts pushed the line further. Airfields overrun, supply lines harassed. The equation of war rewritten in numbers that the enemy could barely comprehend. Yet even in defeat, bravery persisted. Pilots attempted desperate maneuvers, rolls, dives, steep climbs, seeking escape or reprieve, and each moment became a lesson in futility against industrial precision. Jensen banked sharply, wings tilted, diving toward the nearest 190, his pulse steady despite the chaos, engines vibrating, guns firing in controlled rhythm. He could see the panic in the enemy's movements, the hesitation, the split-second miscalculations. Every pilot relied on instinct, but the Thunderbolt amplified those instincts, converted fear into decisive action. Steel fire and human skill fused into one unstoppable force. Numbers told part of the story, but the human experience told the rest. 22. Luftwaffe fighters destroyed in a single morning. 0 Thunderbolts lost. The scale of devastation was almost unimaginable. A ratio that confirmed not just superiority, but inevitability. Engineers and pilots alike understood the synergy. The P-47's weight, armor, and firepower combined with human judgment created a new form of dominance. The sky itself had become a weapon. Even German reports, cautious and censored, admitted it. Enemy aircraft impervious to standard tactics, formations unable to respond, losses severe, morale faltering. Sparse words, but enough to reveal the shock. The realization that experience alone could not withstand technological and industrial advantage. Each German pilot faced the moment of clarity, a flash of recognition mid-air, that the world they had known, the rules they had relied on, no longer applied. The Thunderbolts exploited every advantage, dive speeds exceeding 430 miles per hour, guns firing in sync with engine revolutions, armor absorbing hits that would cripple lesser aircraft. A combination of brute force and precision, every maneuver calculated, yet fluid, instinctive. Pilots relied on both training and intuition, the machine magnifying their skill, every decision critical, every burst of fire potentially decisive. On the ground, the arithmetic became human reality. Fields littered with wreckage, smoke curling from engines, burnt-out fuselages glinting in the morning sun. Artillery crews calculated trajectories. Mechanics recorded serial numbers of downed aircraft, each statistic a testament to both human effort and technological supremacy. Yet behind each number lay fear, exhaustion, and the unspoken realization that the war above had shifted irreversibly. Folklore and rumor began to circulate even then. Whispers of a plane that could shrug off bullets, that could dive faster than any fighter, that could unleash fire with terrifying precision. Pilots told stories of a silver demon in the sky, invisible until it struck, unstoppable once engaged. The P-47 became legend before the day was done. Even officers who had never flown it spoke in hushed tones, acknowledging its impact, its inevitability. Amidst this escalation, human courage persisted. Jensen's wingman Miller dove through flak and tracers, aligning sights on a Focke-Wulf spiraling too low, firing controlled bursts, the enemy plane igniting mid-air. Miller exhaled sharply, heart racing. The satisfaction of survival mingled with horror at the destruction. Moments like these were repeated across the skies, each pilot enmeshed in a dance of death and skill, industrial might and human bravery intertwined. Statistics confirming reality, but folklore breathing life into it. Ground crews, engineers, and pilots collectively shaping the outcome. Ammunition belts reloaded engines, tuned wings, checked. Every sortie a collaboration. every engagement a testament to the combination of preparation, courage, and engineering. The P-47 was more than a machine. It was a manifestation of all three. The Germans had expected an ordinary fight, a standard engagement, yet reality delivered a lesson in escalation. Each Thunderbolt sortie compounded losses. Numbers and tactics rendered obsolete. The airspace dominated by a combination of weight firepower and human ingenuity. Outgunned, outranged, outproduced, the mantra became reality. And with it, panic replaced confidence. Hesitation replaced aggression. The psychological impact as lethal as the physical. By mid-morning, the scale of the battle was clear. Formations of German aircraft fractured, pilots forced to retreat or risk annihilation. Thunderbolts patrolled aggressively. Altitude, speed, and firepower dictating engagement. No maneuver went unpunished. Every split-second decision amplified. The sky a laboratory of strategy, courage, and firepower. Each human choice magnified by the machine. And yet, even amidst statistics and devastation, human moments persisted. A pilot shielding his wingman from concentrated fire. A daring climb to intercept a straggler. Whispered prayers in headsets. Subtle gestures of solidarity amidst chaos. These moments, fleeting but profound, became the core of legend. The human element that gave dimension to cold numbers and allowed the story of the Thunderbolt to endure beyond charts and logs. April 1944, Northern France. The Luftwaffe confronted reality. The P-47 Thunderbolt had turned expectation into collapse, confidence into fear, and laughter into silence. Outgunned, outranged, outproduced. The sky belonged to those who mastered the machine, and those who had not. Learned too late. The escalation, measured in numbers, firepower, and human response, created a turning point, a moment when legend and fact intertwined. The Thunderbolt had imposed its dominion, its presence reshaping the battlefield. The arithmetic of war was no longer theoretical. It was written in smoke, fire, and courage, and every pilot who survived carried the memory of a sky set ablaze by human skill, industrial power, and the relentless roar of a machine called the P-47. By mid-afternoon, the sky over northern France had transformed into a ledger of destruction. Tracer fire still streaked through clouds like ink on parchment. The Thunderbolts roared overhead, relentless, precise. The Luftwaffe scrambled to regroup, yet numbers told the story before words could. Outgunned, outproduced, outmaneuvered. The reality was stark. Pilots who had laughed at the P-47 only hours before now fought for survival. Each burst of gunfire, a reminder of industrial power harnessed with deadly skill. Reports filtered back to German command. Terse clipped, almost unwilling to admit the scale. Engagements unsustainable. Formations broken. Losses mounting beyond replacement capacity. Memoirs later confirmed the psychological toll. Oberst Schmidt reflected, "We had expected a fight, a test of skill, not an avalanche of steel and fire. The sky was no longer ours." The words capture the subtle horror of understanding too late. The realization that preparation, experience, and confidence could be rendered irrelevant by innovation and execution. Thunderbolts continued to sweep the skies, dive after dive, guns cutting through wings, fuselages, and hope alike. Smoke spiraled from downed aircraft drifting lazily toward the earth. The aftermath of each encounter marked by silence, punctuated only by distant artillery. Below, soldiers counted wreckage, logged casualties. Each entry in the ledger both statistical and human. Each loss a story, each success a testament. Fact and folklore collided. The machine's specifications now intertwined with legend. On the ground, German pilots huddled in tension. Maps spread across damp tables, coffee cooling in metal cups, faces drawn, eyes hollow with disbelief, strategies recalculated, attempts to adapt met with reality. Speed, armor, and firepower of the Thunderbolt defied expectation. A machine that could absorb hits, deliver devastating counterattacks, and return to base. The arithmetic of war made flesh and metal and human skill. Each sortie left indelible marks, a battlefield rewritten, the myth of invincibility shattered. Meanwhile, American pilots debriefed in their makeshift hangars, the smell of oil smoke and sweat thick in the air. Faces streaked with grime, eyes bright with adrenaline, yet quiet with respect. The magnitude of what they had accomplished slowly sank in. Lieutenant Jensen wrote, "We knew the machine. We trusted it. And in that trust, the sky became ours. But the cost was always present. Every engagement, every shot carried weight. The human acknowledgement of risk and responsibility juxtaposed against the cold efficiency of the aircraft. Industrial impact mirrored tactical success. Production lines continued unabated. New Thunderbolts rolled out of factories, each a mirror image of its predecessors. Identical, precise, and lethal. The Luftwaffe could not replace losses fast enough. Statistical domination reinforced the narrative of inevitability. Numbers, fact, and human skill intertwined. Outgunned, outproduced. Yet the lessons were learned in fire and steel rather than in spreadsheets. Each pilot who survived carried both triumph and memory. Stories that would be told in mess halls, journals, and whispered conversations long after engines cooled. The human consequences extended beyond pilots. Ground crews, mechanics, ordnance teams, and planners were equally part of the narrative, each meticulously checking engines, armor, and ammunition, each aware that a single failure could be catastrophic. The synergy of human diligence and mechanical excellence created the force that the Luftwaffe could not overcome. Every person involved became a silent architect of aerial dominance, a participant in a ballet of precision, courage, and industrial might. And yet, amidst victory, there was reflection. Lieutenant Miller recorded in his log, "The destruction is complete." Yet each downed aircraft is more than metal. It is life, choice, courage extinguished or preserved. We fly with weight beyond our own bodies. The machine is more than wings and guns. It is a conduit for consequence. The Thunderbolt was both liberator and arbiter, an instrument that transformed the intangible into the undeniable. German pilots faced the echo of defeat, the sudden realization that assumptions had been fatally flawed, formation integrity shattered, morale collapsing, every misstep magnified, a single mistake leading to cascading loss. The machine had turned expectation into collapse. The airspace, once a canvas of skill and instinct, became a dominion of precision, firepower, and human courage coupled with engineering supremacy. Letters and diaries later revealed the psychological imprint. One Luftwaffe pilot wrote, "We laughed at the clumsy American. We believed in our skill, and yet the sky itself betrayed us. Every turn, every climb, every dive, met with fire beyond comprehension. And the noise never left me." Folklore took root amidst these reflections, stories of a silver demon in the clouds, invincible, relentless. A myth forged in steel and ammunition, yet grounded in reality, documented by fact, reinforced by human testimony. By evening, the battlefield bore witness. Smoke still rising from scattered wreckage, fires burning low, the sky quieting, survivors descending, the echoes of engines fading. Yet the memory of domination lingered. Pilots, both victorious and defeated, carried the mark of the encounter. The P-47 had turned the tide. Its presence, its specifications, and the human skill behind it. all coalescing into a decisive moment in aerial warfare. The Germans had learned, too late, that laughter in the face of power could only be fleeting. Industrial, tactical, and human narratives intertwined. The arithmetic of war validated by each engagement. The P-47 Thunderbolt emerged not just as a machine, but as a symbol, a turning point, a herald of what happens when innovation, production, and human courage converge. And in that convergence, the Luftwaffe confronted both reality and legend. The echo of defeat imprinted on memory, on doctrine, and on the battlefield itself. The aftermath lingered long after engines cooled. Debriefings, reports, and journals chronicled fact, yet oral stories carried the resonance of awe. Pilots spoke of the day when the sky burned with fire. Mechanics remembered the machines that returned battered but unbroken. Officers recorded losses and gains, all converging into a single understanding. The Thunderbolt had changed the calculus of war forever. And so, April 1944 came to a close. Northern France scarred both physically and in memory. Pilots descended, engines humming their last, clouds dissipating, and yet a silence heavier than any roar hung over the fields. A silence that spoke of power realized, of assumption, overturned, of a lesson learned in fire and steel. The sky had been claimed. The Thunderbolt had asserted dominance, and history would remember. Not just numbers and tactics, but courage, innovation, and the inexorable turn of industrial might against expectation. Some lessons are written in steel and fire, others in the silence that follows. Northern France, April 1944. The fields bore the scars of conflict, twisted metal glinting in the fading sunlight, smoke still rising from charred fuselages, the air heavy with the smell of cordite oil and rain-soaked earth. Yet amidst the quiet, the echoes persisted, the roar of engines, the hiss of tracers, the human heartbeat in rhythm with machinery, a memory that would linger long after the last pilot returned to base. Lieutenant Jensen sat in the cockpit, engines idling, hands trembling with adrenaline. The roar replaced by the soft hum of propellers. The sky stretched above, calm, now deceptively serene. He exhaled, feeling the weight of survival, of victory, and of the knowledge that the enemy had learned. The Germans had faced the Thunderbolt, and they would never underestimate it again. The laughter that had greeted the first sight of the P-47 had been replaced by silence, awe, fear, and a reluctant respect. On the ground, mechanics and ordnance crews began the meticulous work of inspection. Armor checked, ammunition belts replaced, engines tuned, wings inspected for microfractures invisible to the naked eye. Every detail mattered. Each Thunderbolt a testament to human diligence and industrial might. They had witnessed a machine performing beyond expectation, and yet it was the human element that made it alive. The skill, the courage, the split-second decisions. The choices made in seconds that determined life or death. Even in debriefings, stories emerged, pilots recounting moments when instinct and training collided, when a wingman's dive saved a life, when a burst of gunfire turned despair into survival, the human drama of war interwoven with steel and fire. Lieutenant Miller wrote, "The Thunderbolt is more than a machine. It is a partner, a protector, a reminder that courage and precision together can redefine what is possible." Each story became legend, whispered in mess halls, written in logs, and remembered in the quiet of night. The Luftwaffe reflected on the morning with grim calculation, a mixture of disbelief and grudging respect. Formations broken, confidence shattered, tactics that had once guaranteed dominance now insufficient, losses that could not be replaced quickly enough. Yet amidst defeat, lessons were learned, new strategies considered, pilots haunted by memory, and yet resilient, preparing for the next encounter, always the next engagement, the war relentless, and the sky unforgiving. Across Europe, reports of Thunderbolt engagements began to spread. Pilots told stories of silver demons in the clouds, machines that shrugged off fire, struck with precision, and vanished before retaliation could come. The folklore intertwined with fact, numbers and specifications giving weight to legend. 850 caliber guns, armored fuselage dive speeds beyond expectation. Statistics measured in spreadsheets, but human experience measured in awe, terror, and survival. The two together creating a narrative that would endure. In the quiet of their bases, American pilots pondered what they had witnessed. The scale of industrial might, the precision of engineering, and the role of courage. How each sortie, each engagement had shifted the balance of power. The Thunderbolt was not just a weapon. It was an assertion, a herald, a message written in fire across the sky. That numbers, preparation, and human skill could converge to change outcomes. That innovation married to discipline was unstoppable. The battlefield itself held memory. Charred fields, twisted wreckage, and scattered equipment. A silent archive of events. Each scrap of metal telling a story. Each burned-out engine a lesson. Even the wind carried echoes. The faint metallic scent, the whisper of movement through broken trees. Ghosts of flight shadowed by courage, fear, and inevitability. A landscape imprinted with history, and yet ready to teach again, for those who would fly into it and survive. Or not. And yet, questions lingered. What if the Thunderbolt had not been there that day? What if experience alone had been trusted over preparation and innovation? Could the Luftwaffe have adapted in time? History does not offer easy answers, only scenarios, and the weight of possibility. Each pilot, each engineer, each soldier carried the knowledge that war was as much about foresight as firepower, as much about human decision as it was about steel, and every lesson would ripple forward. Across airfields and battlefronts, the echo of April 1944 persisted. Engines would roar again. Machines would clash. Pilots would face fear and test skill. And the Thunderbolt would continue its work, relentless, precise, and alive in the hands of those who understood it. It became a benchmark, a standard against which future engagements would be measured, a symbol of the fusion of courage, industry, and ingenuity, the living embodiment of aerial dominance. Even now, decades later, historians trace the impact. Journals report memoirs, piecing together moments of terror, skill, and machine. The Thunderbolt's legacy, a combination of fact and folklore. Each sortie documented, each engagement analyzed. Yet the human heartbeat remains central. The moment a pilot pulls back on the stick, the breath caught, the decision made, the fire unleashed, all converging into one understanding. The sky belongs to those who master both machine and mind. As shadows lengthened over northern France, the sun dipping below the horizon, silence fell over the fields, smoke curling lazily from wreckage, and yet the echoes remained. In memory, in history, in the whispered stories of those who survived. What was learned that day would inform every aerial engagement thereafter, a testament to preparation, courage, and the inexorable logic of industrial power. Yet it also reminded all who flew that mastery of a machine demands mastery of oneself, a symbiosis of human and steel. Some lessons were written in smoke and steel, others in silence carried on the wind, and still others waiting for the next battle, the next pilot, the next machine. The sky once assumed predictable had been rewritten, by fire, by courage, by the relentless P-47. And in that rewriting, the story of April 1944 endures. A story of laughter turned to awe, confidence turned to caution, and a lesson in the unforgiving calculus of war. And as one day ended, and another began, as engines hummed in distant hangars, as pilots prepped for the missions ahead, the echo remained, subtle, insistent. A question for the next generation: what would they do when the sky itself became a weapon? When the balance of power shifted in the hands of courage, skill, and innovation? The story does not end here. It merely pauses, waiting for the next chapter, the next roar, the next burst of fire that will etch new lessons into the clouds. Some lessons were written in smoke and steel, others in silence. The next story begins where the last echo faded, and for those who would watch and listen, the question remains: would you have laughed at the thunderbolt, or would you have felt the fire before it was too late?